Question 7.5 would like you to use the diagram that you've been given to calculate the RF value, and they give you the equation that it is the distance the pigments have moved from the origin divided by the distance that the solvent has moved. So it wants us to use figure 5 to calculate the RF value of pigment C. So we need to go to our diagram. We need to find out how far pigment C has travelled. So we measure from the origin line up to the middle of the dot for C. And that gives us our first value. We also need to measure for dot A. So we go from the origin and again up to the middle of dot A, because this will help us calculate how far the actual solvent has moved. So it tells us in the question that the RF value of A is 9.5. So we need to use this RF value. We now know the distance that the pigment has moved from the origin. Therefore, we can now calculate the distance that the solvent has moved from the origin, because we have 0.95 and then we have the distance that pigment A has moved from the measurement that you've got. So we can rearrange that equation and we would do the distance that we have measured for pigment A and divide that by our RF value of 0.95. This would give us the distance that the solvent has moved from the origin. We now can put our value in that we've got for pigment C, so we know how far the actual dot moved from the origin, and we divide that by the distance that the solvent has moved that we've just calculated from our pigment A RF value and the distance pigment A moved. So we should end up with an answer within the range of 0.58 to 0.62.